Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Okay, we're good. We're back. All right. So for now, just to make sure we get the concept, so we can fly out the door and begin prescribing things right away. Okay. How would we create a jazz cluster for the heart? Where would we start? So first, we'd need to decide what we want to do with the heart, right? Because as we all know, there's no holy grail herb or a formula or jazz cluster that's good for the heart. Okay. So once we have that clearly in mind, we would go to Min Jie balance table 2. Let me share that with you. Min Jie balance table 2. Okay. We would go to line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our heart line. Okay. We'd start picking herbs that only have channel tropisms as much as possible on this line. So heart, kidney, gallbladder, small intestine, gallbladder twice, and spleen, right? Okay, not from any other line, okay? So as long as we can stick with that, there's really nothing to figure out or calculate or get hung up about, okay? Just pick herbs that go through the channels that are on that line, okay? The chart does all the calculation for you, okay? And once we look in our formulary companion, okay, we have a list of possible choices for our target organ systems. So we compare what we want to do with what the herbs on the list can do, okay? And we use that process to whittle away at our list, whatever that might be, until we have a list that only contains the herbs what we want to do. It's so simple, right? Okay, then we optimize that list to discover what the best combination of herbs that does what we want to do in the most elegant way. Okay, so it's just a whittling, just like in the old cartoons where they take the big tree and they go zzz, all the way down to a toothpick. Okay, that's what we're doing every single time. So let's create a heart formula. But what kind of a heart formula? Let's say we want to create a formula that would dispel cold blood stagnation from the heart system. Okay. Okay, we'll call that formula Wolf 1. Okay. The wolf is flow backwards. Okay. So what's our target organ systems? The heart. Okay, so again, we'll go back to our balance table 2. We'll look along the squares along line 5. Okay, here, let's put it up. Okay, so we look along all those squares along line 5. Okay, what do they say? Heart, kidney, gallbladder, small intestine, gallbladder, spleen. Okay, so I notice gallbladder appears twice on line 5. So maybe I'll pay some attention to that. Why? Because 2 systems are twice as strong as 1. Remember, each one of these systems is a real thing, okay? And because we're removing stagnation from the heart system, we're going to need to mobilize that organ system's related food. So the balance table chart is really going to help you to understand. When we think about Zong Fu, we think heart, we automatically think small intestine, right? But actually, if we look at the balance chart, I think the gallbladder is more of a food for the heart, or on a practical level, it's more of a food for the heart than the small intestine is, because we have this double relationship. So that's just something to keep in mind. It can kind of reorient this Zong Fu idea for you a little bit. So Min Jie, Zong, and Fu are different than regular traditional Chinese medicine, Zong and Fu. It includes them, those classical ones, but also we expanded a little bit too, don't we? Okay. Anyway, that's an idea. So we're going to remove stagnation from the heart system. We're going to need to mobilize that organ system's Fu. Okay. So again, A Min Jie practitioner would get up and shout about gallbladder for the heart. Okay. So now I go to my list of herbs that enter the Han Shaoyan Heart Jing channel. Okay. What do we want to do there? We want to dispel cold blood stagnation from the heart system. What are we going to look for? We're going to look for herbs that enter the heart, kidney, gallbladder, small intestine, or the spleen. Okay. We want to look for herbs that are neutral to warm, don't we? Why? Because we're dispersing cold blood stagnation. I hope we all understand that this is really, in terms of temperature, we have a very allopathic system, okay? So we always treat, is that, yeah, I'm just trying to think if what I'm saying is, because I don't like to say always, but I am pretty sure we always treat allopathically with respect to temperature. So that is, if it's a cold situation, we always treat it with a warm herb, and vice versa. It's just going to be like that. There's not that much fancy stuff that that we do with hot and cold. There's nothing that I can think of off the top of my head where we would do that. So anyway, for practical purposes, we can say always, and certainly with your beginning practice, we can say always. We're going to have an allopathic kind of an orientation, meaning we use opposites to treat, okay? So we're going to be looking for herbs that are neutral to warm, okay? Probably look for herbs that are acrid to activate, possibly bitter if there's some toxicity involved, possibly sweet if we need to moisten and nourish a little bit, possibly bland if there's a lot of tightness or if there's fluid congestion. Probably would not use astringent unless the patient is really, really too far dispersed. Might want to use salty if there are accumulations. Might want to use sour if there's a lot of dryness. Okay, but for sure we want to have something that's acrid. Okay. So the first thing we're going to discover when we start going through that list is going to be, and when I talk about these lists, these are the lists that are in the formulary companions. Okay, so this is all listed out for you again, so you don't have to think. Okay, I did all of this collation for you already. Okay. So the first thing we discover is out of all those herbs that enter the heart, a very small percentage of them only enter the channels that we're looking for. That's exactly what we want, isn't it? Why? Because we're making our toothpick from the tree. Okay, so here we go. Let's just start looking at them. Balance table 2. I'm done with you for now. Okay, the first one we run into is Xiaodou. Okay, it's sweet, sour, and it's neutral. We're really going to be using this to disperse cold blood stagnation from the heart? Not too likely. It's got some good channel associations, sure. Pretty simple. The sweet, sour, and neutral is probably not going to get us into the ballpark. But we might need to use it under certain circumstances, okay? How about the next one that we run into? Zhifuzi, right? Wow, that's a totally extreme opposite, but take a look. It's exactly what we're looking for, probably, right? Fuzi, acrid to extremely acrid and also sweet, okay? So it's going to be really activating things, really blowing them out, but it's going to be consolidating a little bit and supporting a little bit. Hot to very hot, perfect for cold stagnation. But it's quite toxic, or it can be quite toxic. It can be quite toxic. So we maybe want to be a little bit careful with that one. Maybe consider using something else because it's so toxic. Keep in mind, guys, foods, and I think I mentioned this before, but of all the different poisonings that are happening in Chinese medicine around the globe per year, a huge number of those poisonings happen with fudza. So unless you have a really, really good reason to use fudza, I would say keep away from it. Of course, the treated fudza, if you just use it very gingerly, should be fine. But don't use big doses of fudza with people unless you are under really expert supervision in that department with someone who's really like a fudza doctor. Some doctors are fudza doctors. They know how to do it, know how to use it. But I think it's an extreme kind of a treatment. So I would tend to avoid it unless we really needed to. Okay. So what's the next herb we're going to look at? Again, you don't have to get hung up. Don't start writing all this down. That's not what this is about. We're just taking a look at these, okay? Okay, Liu Jinyu. This is a really important herb also, okay? So we already know it's doing exactly what we wanted to do. It's vitalizing blood and transforming stasis. We wanted that, right? We wanted something that's warm, maybe something that's bitter. The aromatic is going to be good because it's going to be blowing that stagnation out. Bitter is going to send a little bit more to the heart. Maybe it's going to be cleaning a little bit. Liu Jinyu, this sounds like a possibility. Okay, nothing too extreme or dramatic about it. Okay. Now, let's take a look at another one. How about xiaomai? Remember, this is the only herb that comes in two forms, the xiaomai and the fu xiaomai. Right? Only herbs that only enter the heart. That's way back in our first class, right? Okay, but it's sweet and cool. So that's probably not going to help us unless we really need to have another heart tropism in there. Okay. How about this next one? Suhaxiang, the styrax. This is also looking really good, huh? Heart and spleen connection. It's warm. It's acrid. Okay, opening orifices. That sounds good because if we have cold stagnation around the heart, we're going to have some closed orifices in this department for sure. A little bit sweet, so it's going to modify and moderate. Not modify. It's going to moderate a little bit. It's going to nourish a little bit. That's sounding kind of good. Definitely sounding kind of good. Now, remember, with these open orifice herbs, because they're so aromatic, we don't need to use a lot of them. Okay, so just a tiny, tiny pinch. It's just basically enough to smell it to get things going. Okay, and then anything more than that, it'll be opening and opening and opening to the point where it could be irritating, irritating, irritating. So we don't want that. Okay, so that's a possibility. We could definitely imagine using that. Certain circumstances, we might want to use this herb. Also is the haishen, the sea cucumber. So interesting that it's Tanafai Yang herb. This is a great example, kind of a flipping of polarity, because I don't know if any of you dive, but if you've ever seen a sea cucumber in the ocean, they're the most yin thing in the world. Totally yin, complete yin creature. But interestingly, they tonify the yang. You never imagine it. You definitely imagine it salty, being there in the ocean. Sweet, they have a very sweet nature. They look kind of like giant soft caterpillars rolling along, right? Anyway, not to get too hung up on that, but sweet, and the saltiness and the warmth sounds good for dissolving some accumulations for what we're looking for in creating a heart formula, doesn't it? Goes to the heart and the kidney. That's exciting because some of those other ones mostly were going heart, they were more heart spleenish, right? Qiao. Now, remember that Qiao. I'm starting to get more excited now about Qiao. Why? Because it has that small intestine tropism as well, okay? So that's making it a little bit more appealing, and especially because it's neutral. Okay, so we didn't want to use it before when we were first looking at things because it's too namby-pamby. But now that we know that it's neutral, now suddenly that looks good because at least it's not cold. And that small intestine tropism could really help us in building a formula, couldn't it? Okay, so that's sounding more interesting to me. Okay, now how about Long Yan Ro? There's another herb. okay? Heart and the spleen. So there's another spleenish, heart spleenish herb, okay? It's warm, it's sweet. We know it's not astringent, so that's good, okay? So sometimes when they're talking about the taste of herbs, they'll say that it's not something, and they do that for very specific reasons. So we know it's not astringent, okay? Sweet and warm. That could help in certain situations, huh? It definitely could help maybe moderate what we're doing. Okay, now here comes an herb. Here comes an herb that has both kidney and spleen. Okay, so that might be helpful. Okay, it's sweet, but this one is astringent. So maybe it's not going to be that helpful, right? It's neutral, we know that. But if for some reason we needed to have all of these tropisms, might not be too bad, but we'd have to be careful of the astringency for what we want to do. I would say probably quite careful, depending on what else is going on with the patient, okay? Okay, so before I talked about our only herb, our only herb that only goes through the heart, but it comes in two different forms. Okay, so this is the Fu Xiao Mai. This is the other form, right? So this herb has some pretty interesting temperature qualities. Okay, so they say it's cool to cold, but if you get new wheat, it's hot. Okay, old wheat is neutral. So we would surmise that this cool to cold Fu Xiao Mai, who knows what do they do to it to make it so cold? If the new wheat is hot and the old wheat is neutral, how does it get cold? But it does go through the heart channel, but probably not going to be what we want. But it does have that saltiness. Okay, so it's conceivable. We might even wind up using it, especially if we use some of the old wheat kind. All right. Okay, and then our last one that we're looking at here is Zhangnao. Okay, so this is an external application. So we probably wouldn't use it internally because it's quite toxic. So we don't want to use it internally, but it's hot. So maybe we could find a way to use it maybe externally. It's a possibility. Definitely a possibility because it's got a bunch of, it's hot and acrid, okay? And it's more spleenish in our heart discussion, okay? So that's interesting. So those are our different possibilities for what we're looking at. So we're faced with, do we want to stick purely to principle, okay? Or do we want to compromise a little bit, maybe go off track a little bit? But let's try to come up with something, especially for our teaching purposes. We want to try and do it what we want to do without any compromise. We always want to try to do what we're looking to do without any compromise, okay? So what are we doing? We're clearing out cold blood stagnation from the heart, okay? So Chi Xiao Do, remember that started looking good. Why did it look particularly good? Because it has that small intestine tropism and it's neutral, okay? Now I'm gonna say yes to this herb just based on that small intestine tropism and the fact that it's neutral. It's gonna help to add to our synergies based on the other stuff that we saw that didn't, that were really, there were so many of these yin channels in the other herbs, okay? So then maybe, are we gonna add Fuzhe? Maybe, maybe not. It's pretty extreme because of the toxicity. So I wouldn't want to go there with the Fuzhe right off the bat, okay? So let's cancel that for now, okay? I would try, so I wouldn't go there because of the toxicity right off the bat. I would do everything to try and get things moving in the safest way first. Why head straight to Fuzhe? I mean, why? Okay, so let's do something that's a little safer. Even if it's an extreme condition, let's try and, let's do this. Remember our Liu Jinyu? Okay, so now we have heart, spleen, small intestine. Okay, this is starting to sound good, okay. Especially if there's any toxicity, okay. There's likely to be toxicity if there's this much congestion with the person. Remember, congestion is one of the things that can create toxicity, just the congestion itself. Doesn't allow things to flow properly, so toxins build up, right? Okay. Now, if we want to heart it up a little bit, remember we could throw that Xiao Mai in, but again, it's a little bit cooling. So that may or may not help us, actually, okay? Because the cooling isn't the direction we want to go in. But we're starting to kind of stack vertically here, right? So we got a big stack. We got a triple on the heart here. So it's got a lot of heart tropism, a little bit of spleen, a little bit of small intestine, okay? So that's if we were going to do that. So, but for now, let's take it down a stack, okay? Let's say we want to emphasize the spleen a little bit more. Remember, I was excited about that Suhexiang, right? Because it has everything we want. It's warm, it's acrid, sweet, so it's a little bit balancing. I'm going to say yes for Suhexiang for sure, okay? Now, we might want to add, if there's a kidney deficiency, we could throw in some of that sea cucumber if there's a kidney yang deficient quality to what's going on. Possibly. So we'll say that's a maybe. But that kind of, it doesn't exactly screw us up, but it takes us off the heart spleen track. But if we're just thinking about the heart, it's going to strengthen the relationship of this form of the heart because we're adding another heart tropism. So we'd have to decide, do we want to stay on that heart spleen track, or do we want to be more inclusive for the heart and include the kidney also? It's a little bit of a difficult call, but for now, let's just leave it in there, okay? And then maybe we feel guilty about going down the heart kidney route a little bit because we weren't really sure if that's what we needed. So then we want to beef up the heart spleen connection again, so we'll add the long yen row. Okay, we know it's not really going to hurt anything. It's a little bit warm, it's the direction, a little bit sweet. Okay, we know it's not astringent. Okay, we'll do like that. Okay, anything else we want to put in this formula aside from the Gonçal? Again, it's going to depend on the patient's condition. Okay, again, now do we want to use the Lienza? Do we want to use Lienza? I would vote definitely not for this. It's neutral, but it does have heart, kidney, and spleen, so we could kind of make good with our choice about including the kidney and the spleen with Lienza if we want, but I'm kind of creeped out about this astringent quality, so I'm going to say no for right now, unless we wanted to include it maybe with Haishen in a very kidney deficient scenario, okay? Maybe the Fu Xiaomai, but that coldness, I don't know. I don't really trust that coldness and this dynamic quality. So who needs it, right? Okay. Is that cold? And there's also some astringency with the Fu Xiaomai also, so that's completely out of the question. Okay, but salty might be okay. And the heart tropism is always nice, right? But we already said yes to the Xiaomai, so we don't need to include that, right? The Zhangnao, remember that's our external application that's so toxic. So we're definitely not going to be using that in our internal formula. So we'll scratch that for now. But we might be able to begin to think of constructing an external application to go along with our internal formula, okay? So maybe we could use the Fuzi with the Zhangnao, right? Because with the Fuzi was too extreme, we thought. But maybe if we did Fuzi plus Zhangnao, maybe we applied it to the spine along the Xinshu line, okay? Especially because of Fuzi's tropism to the Dumai. That might work out extremely well, okay? So those are the possibilities. So we already came up with this nifty external application, okay? Very nifty external application, the Zhifuzi and the Zhangnao. Okay, we put that along the Xinshu line. Okay, I like that for external. Okay, maybe you could mix it with a neutral to warming oil, apply it to Xinshu and that anywhere on that line. Maybe you could mix it with salt and put it in a cloth and heat it up and apply it to that area in that way. Maybe you could mix it with some whiskey, right? Because whiskey also has very strong spleen heart tropism. Okay, and you could apply it to the area in that way. Okay, and anyway, what else would we do for an internal formula? Okay, so we want to differentiate based on the patient's condition. Okay, and what were the underlying factors? Okay, if it's more of a spleen heart picture, then we're on easy street from everything that we saw, right? If it's more kidney heart, a little more challenging, but let's see finally what we want to wind up with, okay? So we said, yes, let's do heart spleen first, okay? Here's where I would go with that. Okay, so Su Hexiang plus Liu Jinyu plus Long Yan Rou. Look at all this heart spleen. Plus Chi Xiao Dou. Yeah? Okay. Su Hexiang, Liu Jinyu, Long Yan Rou, Chi Xiao Dou. Okay? It's a pretty nifty little combination we have going on here. Let's see, heart, small intestine. Boy, it'd be great to get a gallbladder in there too. So I would think of getting find some gallbladder herb to put in there, and that's going to make, okay, so let's just say for now, plus the gallbladder herb, just to make it really perfect, right? Because we're hunting for that. If we look at our structure here, we have heart, small intestine, yeah, and then down here, we're looking for some, we're looking for some from there, and then we've got the spleen, okay? So I'm gonna wanna put a gallbladder herb in there. So maybe we could find a heart gallbladder herb, look that up, and put that in there. It's gonna make things, I think, a lot stronger. But just for now, we can do this because we're not finding right off the bat any heart gallbladder herbs with the particular search that we looked for, okay? So we do that, plus we add a wee bit of Gansao, okay, like that, okay? So here we've layered multiple herbs with the same or overlapping tropisms, okay? So it's super safe, super effective to do like that, okay? Super safe, super effective. So we got heart stacked up all the way, got a little bit of small intestine, a lot of spleen, okay? We've got almost a spleen for every heart, okay? Then plus that small intestine. So this is a good formula, okay? It's good. But again, I would be happier if we had a little bit of gallbladder in there too. I'd be much happier, okay? Super safe, very effective, okay? So again, what did we want to do? Dispel cold blood stagnation from the heart system, okay? But that would really be only for a spleen heart pathology. Okay, again, so what about the heart kidney? What would I do for that heart kidney? Well, our choices were much more limited for the heart kidney, but this is basically what I would do, I think. Oops. Something like this, okay? Heart, kidney, heart, small intestine, heart, okay? So we got a triple stack on the heart, then we got a kidney balance there, and a small intestine. So again, I would probably look for some kind of a gallbladder, or maybe a herb that goes to the kidney and the gallbladder, ultimately. Kidney, heart, and gallbladder, right? Would be fantastic. Kidney, heart, small intestine, and gallbladder, that would be great. We could look that up, we could find that. Okay. Anyway, this is a simple formula and it would work just fine, okay? Would work just fine, okay? Now we could add, like I said before, if the patient was super deficient, then we could go back and we could add our lianzi just to astringe a little bit so they're not just dumping out, not just hosing everything out, okay? So it is conceivable that we could use the lianzi in a very deficient person, especially if we had to use the high shen like that, okay? That is conceivable, all right? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so these formulas, they're all very acceptable formulas, okay? They'll help the patient a lot. There's just that one issue, okay? We're relying on Chi Xiao Dou's tropism to the small intestine to provide all that food relief, okay? So is it enough? Sometimes yes, and sometimes maybe not. That's when we would have to call in the gallbladder, right? So we might need to, if we, for some reason we can't load up on that gallbladder, figure out a way to do that, right? We might need to load up on Chi Xiao Dou's dosage to make sure the small intestine is really getting activated, okay? But what about the gallbladder? Okay, so here's the thing. All the herbs that enter the heart that also that enter the gallbladder, they have a bunch of other offline tropisms, okay? So we might need to sacrifice the purity of what we're trying to do, stay on that line, okay? To deal with the nitty-gritty world, sometimes we just have to do that. Something that makes that all of that okay and could make that work out is the patient, okay? The patient's condition is going to determine whether we need to add or subtract to the formula or even go slightly offline. So if we go offline in a way that the patient already has some kind of symptoms that are in that department, then it's okay to do that. And we might want to do that, okay? So for example, what if that cold blood stagnation, what if it involves a lot of small vessels? Especially what if there's a lot of inflammation, okay? So we go back to one of our herbs from yesterday. And all our troubles seem so far away. Okay, and remember this herb that I was really a cheerleader for and still am is the lianqiao. The lung, the heart, and the gallbladder. Okay, so that lung tropism might take us offline in terms of what we're doing. Maybe, but it actually enhances the gallbladder's effects through that other classical relationship that I haven't taught you yet, which is the yen-tiger relationship, remember? Okay, so that lung gallbladder is a tropism. Okay, heart gallbladder for sure, this is what we're looking for. So lianqiao, if we had some inflammation and more small vessel stuff, that would include the lung, right? It'd be perfect for this. It is cool to slightly cold though, okay? So we would have to do other things to warm it up, but we might want to add lianqiao into that formula. Now again, who would add lianqiao into a formula for a heart blood stagnation? Well, Min Jie person would if it was merited. Sometimes it is, okay? Plus the lung and the heart frequently implicate each other with circulatory issues, don't they? Okay, so this could be exactly what we need. Could be. So if it's exactly right, don't worry about including it. Don't be too pure about staying on the line. Try and stay on the line as much as you can, but if it's exactly right according to the patient's presentation, then not only don't worry about it, you have to include it, okay? That's the synergy of the moment, and that's what's gonna make you Min Jie, right? You can even deviate from your own principles a little bit if it serves what's going on for the patient in the moment, all right? Okay. So maybe there's another situation, maybe there's liver heat and congestion. It's complicating the cold blood stagnation in the heart system. Okay, that's a complicated picture, isn't it? Liver heat and liver congestion complicating cold blood stagnation in the heart system. We definitely see that, okay? So what would we use there? This would be a crazy combo. We could add some New Huang, maybe, just a little bit. All these perfect synergisms right there, okay? So that would help us out a lot with this gallbladder issue that we're trying to balance out our formula with, right? Okay, but a little bit of the liver, but the liver is going with the gallbladder. Okay, so the liver is going to strengthen that gallbladder, isn't it? Yeah, so it's going to help. So this is going to have a very strong gallbladder-ish effect, especially because why? It is a gallbladder. Okay, like that. Okay. Okay, so that's really very, very good way to learn how to be flexible, okay? So what if that same picture also has some phlegm stagnation? Then maybe you could add something like Tianzhu Huang. Sweet and bitter, again, it's cold, but same kind of tropisms like that New Huang. And if there's a lot of phlegm, we might have to use it. So then we'd use more of the warming herbs. We just jack up the percentage of those warming herbs or use a small amount of this. Okay, but it's still very much within the realm of what we want to do. Okay, So if you wanted to add some more power to either of those pictures, we could sort of include both of them, pictures that we were talking about. You'd have something like Eugene, okay? So heart, liver, gallbladder, and lung. All of them sort of combining all of those together. Eugene's very, very, very effective in treating a whole bunch of different heart vessel issues, especially if there's any kind of heat that's attacking the heart. Okay, so we might want to use these even though we're talking about the cold stagnation. Okay, would we use a lot of it? No, we wouldn't, because we want the basic nature of the formula to stay warm, but we might use it for its acridity and the bitterness, taking a little bit more to the heart, and all these great synergisms. Okay, again, lung not necessarily, and the liver not necessarily, but when we look at the whole picture, it might work out okay. Okay. What if it's a totally different picture and the patient is blood deficient, plus cold blood stagnation in the heart system, in the heart organ system, right? What would we use? Well, there's another herb that would be perfect for that. Okay. Totally blood deficient plus cold blood stagnation. We use the Swantao Ren. So that's more of the heart spleen line. Okay, but it's got liver and gallbladder also. So this liver is supporting gallbladder again. Boom. We will be cleaning and supporting at the same time. Okay. So we could also add that to some of the other formulas if we don't want that coldness of the other herbs that we were talking about before. Okay, but generally, we'll just need to balance the coldness of the formula with warm herbs if the patient isn't presenting with heat sign. Okay. What if we want to, we've been talking about the small intestine, how do we get away from the small intestine, but what if we actually wanted to go more into the direction of small intestine? Okay. What if they have like an acute heat invasion with that cold blood stagnation in the heart system? Right? Acute heat invasion with cold blood stasis in the heart system. That happens? Sure, it happens, of course, okay? You could call on Yang Ming to help discharge it, okay, and not allow it to go any deeper in the body. How would you do that? You could use something really simple, like oolong cha. Okay, heart, small intestine, that's on our heart line, okay? But we want to call a little bit of Yang Ming in. And it also has that lung, well, in general, okay? That's going to be good for that acute heat invasion anyway, right? Like that, okay? Or maybe, thinking again about that acute heat invasion, maybe we would use something like Dan Jie, right? Sweeten the bland, okay? Still calling in the Yang Ming to help to purge the heat, but we have our heart and our small intestine here. So that dangling stomach tropism is going to be looking for Yang Ming activities to keep itself busy, right? Okay, so even though it's not on the line that we're looking at, there's some situations where we might need to invoke it like this, okay? And it can really save the day. Okay, in that case, you would want to avoid using the gallbladder maybe, because that might drag the illness into Xiaoyang, right? So that could be a mess. Okay, so this is maybe a time that you would want to use the stomach and not use the gallbladder so you don't take it from Yang Ming into Xiaoyang. Wow, see? So we can't forget our Chinese physiology when we're discussing this stuff, okay? What if there's some kind of a cancer involved, especially with stagnant fluid in the upper jiao? Maybe we could use, ban bian lian, right? It's pretty toxic. Pretty toxic. But if it's cancer, we might need to use that toxicity. Well, cancer, okay. But that might be a part of the blood stagnation and the toxicity of the cancer itself. Okay. Well, maybe fluid is building up in the upper jiao. What would we do then if fluid is building up in the upper jiao with this picture? Maybe we would add something like deng xin cao. Okay. It's sweet, it's bland, it's cool, slightly cold, okay, but we again use two different aspects of the water system, lung and the small intestine, to get that out, that blandness, also helping to relieve the fluid congestion, okay? What if that fluid keeps congesting, we need to make it stronger, okay? And it's backing up into the whole system, okay? Then maybe we'd add mouton as well, huh? Okay. It's gonna help invoke the small intestine to really pull Taiyang into this to get that water out, okay? We do like that. And remember, if we want to make it even stronger after that, remember mutong, I want you to always think mutong chumai, okay? Always like that, to make it even stronger. So there's the chuan mutong, and then there's also the mutong itself, okay, which is the akebia, okay? And I think the akebia is off limits to us now, okay? What if the blood stagnation, the congestion are causing bleeding? Remember what my favorite herb is for that kind of a situation from yesterday? We were talking about that. The xiaoji. We use the xiaoji. Invoke that. Okay, so then we have this strong Taiyang assistance. That is very, very good, that bitter and sweetness to stop the bleeding. Okay. These are all examples of jiajian, right? Adding or subtracting things from original formula, okay? That's the kind of flexibility that it takes to do Min Jie medicine, okay? All right, so we're gonna get back to our liver pericardium name relationship herbs. Let's take a 5-minute break first, and then we'll get back to that, okay? Because there's a lot more to do just with this name relationship, okay? So I'll see you in 5.